So the viewing audience can't see this piece of dirt that we're talking about here in Bosque County, Texas, but the birds are singing, bluebonnets are still out, it's lush out, but not everything that the deer need to grow into the monsters that we raise is necessarily produced by nature here. So you were feeding and growing your animals out here and using national brand feeds that just weren't quite cutting it. Tell us about your transition from being a feed customer to being a producer.
Yeah, so the feed programs that we were using, they weren't quite getting the job done. We weren't getting the results we wanted. We needed a little more production out of our animals. Like I say, we put a pencil to everything we do out here. It's run as a business. It's got to be able to make money. Those practices that we were using that weren't quite getting us there, we scrapped them, tried to come in with a new program. Part of that program was kind of doing a little bit of our own research with some different feed ingredients and stuff. And as soon as we started playing with different rations, we started seeing a little more production, a little more production, a little more production. And every time we'd come up with a trial that we got more production out of, it would stay in place. And we would just grow on that over time. We started out, for instance, our average fawn crop used to be 125% is what we would get on an annual basis.
And that's pretty good for a high fence ranch because you've got your predators controlled, you're feeding every animal, you don't really have there's not an issue where an animal doesn't have access to enough feed, it's just how much they can get and how healthy that makes them.
Yeah, and that's in a breeding facility to where we can control predation, control everything they're eating. As soon as we started playing with the little different formulas, playing with minerals, for the past 4 years, we've averaged over 200% fawn crop.
That's a huge increase.
That is a huge increase to the bottom line. Part of that process to get there, one really important aspect of it is we found the importance of an elevated fat level. You get that fat content up, and that just increases the overall health of your herd. You got better conditioned animals. It's going to enhance antler development. It's going to promote early maturity in your animals when those fawns hit the ground. And mama has a really high quality buttermilk due to a high fat ration. That's going to give that fawn a much better start.
And it's going to cut down on your death loss too.
So part of this process, we have seen much less death loss in our herds for sure.
And that's bottom line. Tell us about bonus babies. What's a bonus baby?
So part of that enhanced buttermilk in the fawns, we developed this, we call it fawn starter. It's a high fat, high protein ration. I think it is 22 protein and a 12% fat that we mill down to the consistency of chicken scratch. We put it in a creek feeder to where only the fawns have access to get in there to it. And from about 2.5 weeks of age, the fawns will start eating on that feed. So the whole time while they're nursing mama, they can go to that creek feeder at any time and get some of this fawn starter. And that just promoted early growth and development in those fawns. And from what we're seeing, there's a threshold of weight on a doe fawn that if you can get her to roughly around 80 pounds before the end of breeding season, she'll cycle and breed when she's just 6 or 7 months old. And that way she's having a fawn when she's turning 1 year old. I call them bonus babies because those deer shouldn't be doing that to start with.
Well, it really just goes to show how increased nutrition unleashes the biological potential in these animals, because most people are used to seeing around their neighborhood or in their low fence ranches, they'll see a mama deer walking around with one baby. But nature is, in these animals, is more along the lines of an heir and a spare, when they're properly nourished and they've got that fat content, they're going to throw 2 eggs when they cycle, and fawns or twins becomes the norm and not the exception.
Yes, yeah. And also gives that doe the ability to actually raise a set of twins or set of triplets. If you don't have that nutrition just right, or that animal is experiencing some kind of stress, whether it's weather related, health related, whatever it is, they have a tendency to she has twins, she'll kick one of them off and just raise one if that's all she thinks she can do. So you get them at peak performance, they'll raise twins and trips, no problem by them on their own.
And that'll carry true whether you're talking about a high fence managed ranch or a low fence area with a ton of acreage. Texas just had last year in 2022 a very bad drought, and we're hearing from ranches that had 10 to 15% fawn crop, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Obviously, things were dry here too. Did you see anything like a 90% drop here with your feed, or were we able to dodge that?
No, we were able to dodge the worst part of it. We can handle the nutritional aspect of those stress periods. We obviously can't handle the Mother Nature aspect of that. So Mother Nature still plays a little bit of role when she wants to throw something at us like a hot dry drought. But all of our ranches, they either maintained or had a small drop off. It wasn't like the fawn crop was eliminated like it was on a lot of properties.
Right. Now, Server Complete was developed for the large managed Texas Parks and Wildlife certified ranches with breeding operations. Does that mean that Server Complete is should only be used there, or
no?
What benefits can a low fence ranch get from feeding Server Complete? Is it the same that high fences, or are there additional benefits?
Yeah. So that was kind of an unintended bonus to what we were doing. Everything that we were doing was geared around getting the deer in the pens the nutrition that they needed. But as soon as we started using that out in the pasture and the free range and some of these bigger high fence ranches, that the attractant value to that went through the roof. And I think it came down to the elevated fat content in the rations. Those animals, when they have a source of nutrition, they're naturally going to gravitate to it. And as long as you're providing that they're not going to go anywhere.
Right.
So the attractant value to some of this stuff that we were doing was kind of an unintended benefit to developing Server Complete.
We hear a lot in the feed stores, a lot of the folks that are putting feed out, they get real frustrated because they're seeing these prices go up, and on low fence ranches, they're worried about their growing a big deer, and then their neighbor's going to shoot their deer. The amount of travel that a deer will have to do when they're eating, when they're getting all their nutritional needs met, if they've got the food, they've got cover and water. Have we noticed from some of our partners with game cams that animals just like to stick around?
Absolutely, we can definitely help hold herds of animals in place on a piece of property 9 months out of the year. You see a little bit of moving around when the rut starts that naturally you can't control a lot of that, but at the same time, you're pulling in a lot of animals at that same time as well.
Right. If your does aren't traveling and and the bucks are out chasing does, they're going to be chasing the does. They're going to be coming from your neighbor's property onto yours, looking for those does.
Yeah.
So you get to have all the cool fights on your game camera, and then you get to have your pick.
Yeah.
So that works out well. The attractant value. One of the ways that I try to illustrate this is I ask people, what do you smell when you go into a movie theater? And like, well, I smell popcorn. It's like, no, you don't. You smell butter. And the butter is fat. And when you make a baked potato, what do you put on it? You put sour cream, which is condensed fat. You put butter, which is condensed fat. You put cheese, which is condensed fat. You put bacon, which is condensed pig fat. So you put all of this fat into that baked potato because a national brand 2% fat deer pellet is going to be your dry baked potato, where Server Complete at 7%, 8% fat is going to be your loaded baked potato. Tell us what having adequate fat does for the development of a buck.
Yeah. So forever, we've been taught that protein is the number one thing that promotes antler development. Through our research back here in the deer pens, your fat content actually has a little more to do with this growth and development than what that protein does. And different sources of those protein and fat will make a difference in that as well.